Hello everybody and welcome back to my channel. I'm FlyLure737. Today in this video we are going to talk about the abnormal situation of a start valve open on the Boeing 737 NG. What is going to happen if we have a start valve open abnormal situation on the 737 NG? Well, the start valve open light appears in this box, and in this box when we are starting engine number 2 and engine number 1. And as we talked about in the previous videos, and as we showed, the light is going out when the N2 reaches 56% value. That is the minimum value to make the engine start switch pops out to the off position. Sometimes, due to some malfunction in the start valve itself, this is not possible and we have an abnormal situation. Differently from all other situations with the engine start malfunction, we do not have any memory items, and it's imperative that we do not shut the engine down automatically, moving the engine start lever back to cutoff. This because in case of start valve open situation, we still have pressurized air flowing into the engine, and if we would just shut the engine down, moving the engine start lever back to cut off, we would destroy the starter due to the enormous and tremendous pressure that is blowing inside of the starter itself, making the engine totally unserviceable. So it's really important to stick with the cure rate procedure start valve open chapter 7.42. So let's simulate this in this home simulator. Let's start the engine number 2 first. Same procedure. Engine start, switch into the ground position. The N2 is rising, so we would see a completely normal startup and 1 rotation. We would wait for 25% N2, and then we would put the engine start lever into the idle position. So now idle, the engine would accelerate normally with increase of N1, EGT, N2, fuel flow we have, oil pressure, waiting for 56% N2, but let's assume that at 56% this is not going away, this is still lit. So we are in a clear situation of start valve open non-normal. So the pilot flying, so the captain on the ground on the Boeing 737, calls for start valve open non-normal checklist. This checklist is, let's say, combined with a little indication of a visual indication of what's going on. So we have this little box on the top left corner saying start valve open in black onto a yellow background, which represents this light that we would still have lit. And then the pilot monitoring goes ahead and read, saying condition, the start valve open alert indicates the start valve fails to close. So in this case we have engine start switch into off or auto position. According to the variant of the 737 we have, in this case we have the off position. So choose one. Start valve open alert extinguishes. Let's pretend that this is not the case, just for the purpose of the simulation, so let's go ahead. Start valve open alert stays illuminated. Go to step 4. isolation valve switch to close. So let's go in the overhead panel, isolation valve, let's zoom in a little bit, isolation valve to close. Pack switch affected side off. We have started engine number 2, so the right pack must go to off, and it is already into the off position. This causes the operating pack to regulate to high flow in flight with flaps up. Engine bleed air switch affected engine off. Off. Then continue the next page. Choose 1. Start valve open alert stays illuminated for engine 1. That was not the case because we have started engine number 2. So engine start valve open alert stays illuminated for engine 2. Yes. Go to step 8. Step 8, choose 1. In flight. No, that is not the case. We are on the ground starting the engine. So on the ground we have ground air source. If in use, disconnect. We have no source of ground air connected. The only source we have is the APU bleed, and then engine start lever affected engine cut off. Now we can put it into cut off position, not before. Why we could do this only in this situation and not before? Because if we have a look at the overhead panel, we have completely isolated the left part of the system from the right part of the system. So we have ensured that the APU bleed is not going into the right side, into the right engine, and we have ensured as well that the bleed air coming from the right engine itself is not going into the compressor and the turbine of the right engine itself. So the purpose of this checklist, start valve open, page 7.42 of the QRH of the Boeing 737 NG, is to shut down the engine, moving the engine start lever back to cut off only when we have no more sources of pneumatic air flowing into the engine. Only being sure that we have no airflow from the APU or from a ground cart flowing into the engine, we can safely move the engine start lever to cut off and shut down the engine. Of course, if we would have some problems with the engine number 1, we would need also to be sure that the APU bleed air is off to isolate the number 1 engine from the air coming from the APU. Well folks, as you have seen, this kind of situation, start valve open during startup, is a little bit different from all other engine malfunction that we have seen during startup in the previous video. If you have any question, please do not hesitate to comment below. Give a thumbs up to this video if you like it. I hope you enjoyed. I'm FlyLorry737. See ya!